The screen is black. We hear the sound of a heartbeat. Slow, steady, and then silence. A woman's voice speaks over the darkness, barely above a whisper. I named her before they took her away. I named her because I needed to believe she was real. The heartbeat returns, then fades. Cut to a slow pan across a kitchen table covered in old photographs, yellowed papers, and a single handwritten letter. A woman in her late 50s. We'll call her Margaret, sits across from the camera, hands folded tight in her lap. Her eyes are already wet. She doesn't say anything at first. She just looks into the lens like she's been waiting a lifetime to be asked. We begin with Margaret's story, told in her own voice, uninterrupted. She was 19 years old, unmarried, and living in rural Kentucky in 1967 when she became pregnant. Her parents were strict. The community was unforgiving. A local doctor, a man she'd known her whole life, arranged for her to deliver quietly at a private clinic 2 counties away. When the baby came, it was fast, and then it was over. A nurse handed her a clipboard. Someone told her the baby had come too early, that it hadn't made it. She signed papers she barely read because she was hemorrhaging and terrified and alone. She was told there was nothing to keep. She was told to go home and rest and try to forget. She never forgot. For 56 years, Margaret lit a candle every November 14th, the day she gave birth, for the daughter she believed had died in that room. She kept no photos because there were none given to her. She kept no records because they were never offered. She kept only a name. Claire. Now we cut to a woman in her mid-50s named Diane. She lives in Columbus, Ohio. She has a husband, 2 grown kids, a steady job managing a dental office. She is, by all appearances, a woman who has made peace with the world. But when she speaks about her childhood, something shifts behind her eyes. She was adopted at 3 days old, she says. Her adoptive parents, good people, she insists, genuinely good people, told her early on that her birth mother hadn't wanted her. They used the word couldn't sometimes, but mostly wouldn't. They said she had been given up. Diane grew up carrying that word like a stone in her chest. Given up. Like she had been something to be discarded. She spent her 20s bitter. Her 30s, she says. She spent learning how to stop being bitter. She made peace with it, she tells us. She built a full life. But in the back of her mind, in the quiet hours before sleep, she always wondered why. Not angrily anymore, just as a fact of being human. Why didn't she want me? What was wrong with me? What wasn't enough? The story shifts here. A title card appears. Columbus, Ohio -2019. Diane's adult daughter, a 24-year-old named Becca, who grew up in the internet age and has none of her mother's reluctance to poke at old wounds, signs Diane up for a commercial DNA testing service as a birthday gift. It's meant to be fun, she tells us on camera, laughing a little uncomfortably. I wanted to know if we were actually Irish. She had no idea what the test would surface. 3 weeks later, the results come back. There is a first-degree match. Not a cousin, not a distant relative. A first-degree match, the kind the database flags with a small red marker that means parent or sibling. Diane stares at the name on her screen for a long time. The name means nothing to her, but the match percentage means everything. She contacts the match through the platform's messaging system. She keeps it brief. She tells us. Something like, I was adopted in 1967. I think you may be related to me. I don't want to cause any trouble. I just want to understand. She presses send and then, she says, she closes her laptop and goes to make dinner because she doesn't know what else to do with herself. The reply comes the next morning. It is from a woman named Carol, Margaret's niece. who had done the DNA test years earlier on a whim. Carol calls Margaret that same day. Margaret, who is now in her late 70s, goes very quiet on the phone. Then she asks Carol to read the message again, slowly. We hear the audio of the first phone call between Diane and Margaret, recorded with both women's consent. The quality is imperfect. It was done on a speakerphone in Margaret's living room in Kentucky, while her daughter-in-law held the device. What you hear is mostly breathing for the first 15 seconds. Then Margaret's voice, trembling. Are you well? Are you healthy? Not who are you or how did you find me? Her first question is, are you okay? Diane laughs on the recording, and it is the kind of laugh that is right on the border of crying. She says, Yeah, I'm okay. I'm really okay. What follows, both women tell us separately on camera, is an hour-long conversation that dismantled 56 years of false history in real time. Margaret explains the clinic, the nurse, the signed paperwork, the words she was told. Diane sits on the other end of the line and understands slowly that she was never given up. She was taken. Her birth mother spent a lifetime grieving a child who was alive, healthy, and 40 minutes from her by highway. The clinic, they would later learn through a record search assisted by an adoption rights attorney, had a documented history of falsifying birth records in the 1960s. The doctor who delivered, Diane, lost his medical license in 1974 for unrelated fraud. The paperwork Margaret had signed in her hospital bed had not been a death record. It had been a relinquishment of parental rights, written in language she had been too young, too frightened, and too medicated to pass. She had been told her baby died. Her baby had been handed to an adoption broker the following morning. The reunion takes place 6 weeks after that first phone call, on a Tuesday in December, in the lobby of a hotel in Lexington, Kentucky, chosen because it was roughly halfway between Columbus and Margaret's small town. Diane's husband comes with her. Margaret's daughter-in-law and niece Carol come with her. We have footage of the moment, shot by Carol on her phone. It is not cinematic. The lighting is fluorescent. There is Christmas music playing faintly from somewhere. Diane walks in first, spots Margaret across the lobby, and stops walking. Margaret turns, and for a moment the two women just look at each other. A woman in her 50s, and a woman in her 70s. Trying to map a face they've never seen onto a wound they've carried for decades. Then Margaret crosses the lobby in about 4 steps and puts her arms around her daughter. And Diane, who told us earlier she had prepared herself not to cry, cries immediately. A woman in her 50s and a woman in her 70s. Trying to map a face they've never seen onto a wound they've carried for decades. Then Margaret crosses the lobby in about they sit together for 5 hours that afternoon. They order food and don't eat much of it. They go through photographs on Diane's phone. Margaret brings a small paper bag from her house. Inside is a hospital bracelet from the clinic, still in a Ziploc bag she's kept in a shoebox for 56 years, and a handwritten note with a name on it. She explains to Diane that she had named her before they took her. Diane holds the piece of paper for a long time without speaking, steps and puts her arms around her daughter. And Diane, who told us earlier she had prepared herself not to cry, cries immediately. In the closing segment, both women speak to the camera alone. Margaret says she feels something she can't quite name. Not exactly happiness, though there is happiness in it, but something more like the resolution of a chord that's been dissonant her whole adult life. She says she doesn't feel cheated of the years. Not exactly, because feeling cheated doesn't bring them back. She says she spent a long time being angry at the right people, the doctor, the clinic, the system that made it easy to do this to a young woman, and that the anger was appropriate, and that she's mostly let it go. What she wants now, she says, is just time. More dinners. More phone calls. She wants to meet Diane's kids and hear about her life. And know that she is, as she asked on that first call. Okay. Diane says it took her a few weeks after the reunion to stop feeling destabilized. She had constructed a story about herself. A story in which she had been unwanted, in which she had been left. And that story, even though it was painful, had become load-bearing. It had shaped how she thought about herself, about worth, about belonging. Learning the truth didn't instantly replace the story. It just revealed that the foundation had been a lie. She is rebuilding, she says. Slowly. But she says something else that is more important. She says that for the first time in her life, she can look at the question she used to ask herself. Why wasn't I enough? And know that it was never the right question. It was never about her. It was never about being enough. The screen cuts to the two women sitting side by side in the hotel lobby, both looking down at the piece of paper with the name Claire written on it. Margaret says quietly, almost to herself, "I always knew you were out there." Diane doesn't say anything. She takes her mother's hand. Margaret and Diane speak on the phone every week. They have since had 3 more in-person visits. Diane now goes by both her names. Stories like theirs are not rare. Adoption fraud and coercive relinquishment practices were widespread across the United States from the 1940s through the 1980s. Many records remain sealed. Organizations like the Adoptee Rights Law Center continue to fight for access to original birth records in all 50 states. If you or someone you know is searching, you are not alone.